I'm Troy Thompson, and in addition to being the moderator for today and a part-time moderator, apparently, I run the Travel 2.0 consulting group, and I started a project called Mark. It's been about a year now since we started the Mark project, and we were looking for answers when we started it. So we went out to all of our DMO peers, and we said, we'd love to look at your analytics, so if we can start identifying patterns and trends, and then share that with the industry. We want to be able to educate our peers and tell them what's actually going on with their other peers in a very anonymous, safe, sharing sort of way. So what I want to share with you guys today in the 15 minutes that I have, and the moderator's a real asshole, so he'll make me stop right at 15. Self-deprecating humor works every time. I want to share 3 stats with you guys. 3 stats that I feel are trends for the future. Trends for the DMOs in this room. Think of them as a flag in the sand. Right now, the flag is blowing a certain direction. Could that direction change? Certainly. Will it stay the way it is? Possibly. But right now, these are the trends we're seeing in the marketplace. These are the trends that we think are important for you to understand so that you guys can build strategies going forward. The slides here are not answers. These are not overall answers for your individual DMO. These should cause you to ask additional questions. So the first one we'll start with is mobile. So the pretty circle up here represents 100% of your website visitors. So everyone that comes to your website, tablet, phone, laptop, old school computer, doesn't matter. This is all of them. Earlier this year in February, we had found that about 16% of your traffic was coming through a mobile device. Google Analytics defines a mobile device as either a phone or a tablet. So they do count tablet as mobile device. When you hear the word mobile, don't necessarily think that it's always tiny, tiny screen. So back in February, we were at about 16%. We looked at it again here recently, just before this conference in September. Over the last 6 months, we've grown to about 26%. So all these statistics you'll see here today are from 50 of our DMO friends, large and small, all across the country. Is it an absolutely scientific sample? Not as much as we would like, but again, trend data, absolutely. So now we're seeing 1/4 of all traffic to a DMO website coming through a mobile device, either tablet or phone-based. And we've heard a lot this week, or not this week, feels like a week, doesn't it? We've heard a lot yesterday and this morning about mobile. And we've had fantastic sessions on apps versus SAPs and responsive design and whether or not to do responsive design and whether or not you should build a mobile site or not build a mobile site. And I was talking with a lot of our peers last night during the cocktail hour, and they felt more confused. Like, the responsive design session was great, but now I really don't know what to do. I'm telling you, do not get distracted by the technology. This data is telling you that more people are coming and trying to find your content through a mobile device. The technology doesn't matter. Don't get distracted by the fact that it's responsive versus a mobile website or whatever it may be. Focus on the fact of content and tasks. What content do you want them to find? What the hell do you want them to do when they get to your iPhone app, or your iPhone site, excuse me. Focus on that, not necessarily the technology behind it. Your decisions, your goals, the tasks that you create will help define those. Mobile shouldn't be harder. Mobile should be simpler for you guys. Mobile is about making things simpler. If you're putting more stuff on your mobile site, you've probably done it wrong. I recently saw, I'm not going to name the state, most of you probably know the state, and I didn't like their execution for their mobile site. They made it responsive design, and everything went basically from that wide, their site was that wide, and then it just went like this. They included everything on the responsive site, including the weather. Pretty sure that the iPhone comes with a weather app. Maps app aside, the weather app is still working just fine. So let's talk about quality of visitors real quick. This is such a pain. I've got to time myself and look at my watch and make sure I'm maintaining. So let's talk about quality of visitors. So the line here represents visitation growth for DMO websites over the last 48 months. The line is going up. That's fantastic. Left to right, going up, we're adding more traffic. Year over year, most DMO sites are up about 10%, 9.4 to be exact. Your site probably might be a little higher, might be a little lower. It's in that range. But the trend line is going up. And for most of us, we look at that number and we say, yes, that's great. I got my report. The digital guy came and gave it to me. The last month's number is smaller than this month's number. We're adding more visitors. We're doing a good job. But I think now we're getting to the point where we need to get a little bit more thoughtful about these numbers. We have to think beyond just, we added more people. Credit to Christine from Facebook. She did say quality over quantity. Similar type of an idea. The second line represents the number of people that spend less than 10 seconds on your website. Surprisingly, that number is increasing at the same rate as you add visitors. So for all those fantastic visitors that you add, more than half are spending less than 10 seconds on your website. Not shocking, we all know about bounce rate, but I don't think we think about bounce rate in the right terms. We're adding more visitors, they're getting to our site, but more of them are spending less time on it. I don't know about you, but if you guys can actually complete a task on your website in less than 10 seconds, you should probably not be working for a DMO, you should probably be working for Amazon. So there's a challenge. We have to get beyond just adding more visitors and get to the point where we add successful content. We don't want this unsuccessful graph to keep going where it's going. We don't want people to have a failure when they get to our website. We want to bring this bottom line to start going back down. The third statistic. So this little bar represents the number of searches to get to your website that included more than 4 keywords. Okay, so let me explain to you how this happens. Someone goes to Google, they type in keywords, they get to your site. This bar represents the number of people that typed in more than 4. So we can assume that they wanted to get some sort of specific information. Typically, when you type more than 4 words into Google, you've added some specificity to your search. This bar represents that same number, but 48 months apart. So now we're seeing 4 years ago, the top bar is how many people were using 4 or more words to find your site. Today, this is how many people are using 4 or more words to find your site. 31% more. The trend, the data, pretty much irrelevant. What it means is people are using more specific terms to find your content. They're narrowing their focus and trying to find information that is less broad and more narrow. We're experiencing a shift here in the way customers respond, not only in tourism, beyond this room, just in general. In general, we are becoming more individualized, right? Before, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, if we advertised on television and radio, that was a complete campaign. That was what we had. DMOs were great at sending out big, broad messages on television. You know what we're not so good at? Sending out very narrow, niche messages to individual people. We still have a very big, broad sort of mentality, but we're starting to see data and we're starting to see trends in the overall marketplace that are telling us that, hey, you know what? The consumer really isn't interested in being lumped into a giant group, right? They're more interested in being the individual person they are. They found out that, hey, for whether it's pro or con, I can list out all my interests on Facebook and see relevant things coming back to me. If we're still sending out a big, broad message about, hey, it's great to come to our destination because we have everything, the consumer is going to push back and say, that's not really relevant to me. I mean, what are the stats right now? You see, I think the stat was you see 1 billion ads a day or something ridiculous like that. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It was either 1 billion or 2 billion ads. It's something crazy, right? We are inundated with advertising. As soon as I get done with my presentation, you're going to see sponsor slides again. We're going from a point where it's really broad to really narrow, and the people in this room, destination marketing organizations, are facing this challenge. We have been great at sending out broad messages. We need to figure out a way to be great at sending out narrow messages. And I really believe that that starts not only with your social campaign, not only with your mobile campaign, but it starts with you guys going back and rewriting mission statements. Not just strategy, but finding out what's your actual mission and how do we respond to the consumer of today. That's it. Ooh, and I'm under time too, so I don't have to get yelled at. That is me. If you want more information on the MARC program, I am happy to provide it to you. We are always looking for beta partners to help us with the project. Thank you guys very much. David, one second. Let me get the moderator down there to ask your question. Thank you, Jake. Thank you.
You can stand up there.
Yes.
I had a question too. Okay, so I think I'll ask it first. So,
Well, it's your prerogative, so
okay,
please.
I know it is. So, what's the average visit? How many times does average person visit a DMO website?
Once.
Once when?
Period. Once,
Okay.
during the trip planning process, once. I mean, the stats we're seeing, and we released these last spring, I mean, the number was 70%. 70% of the visitors visit once. Now, are there nuances with the way Google records data and if people delete their cookies? I mean, do you really think all of your visitors are deleting cookies? I mean, how many of you delete your cookies every single day? One lady in the back and Mark because he's crazy. So when I tell people that number and I'm like, oh, they only visit once, they're like, well, I bet they delete their cookies. And I was like, maybe there's a margin of error there, but for most people, and we've seen those stats from Google, people visit 22 websites when they're planning a trip. And we've seen that Sean pointed out that Think with Google Insights page. That's the statistic they're putting out. 22 sites they visit when they're planning a trip. We're lucky if we're one of them. Lucky if we're one of them, and we get one shot. And I just told you that half of those people that are coming in that one shot gave you 10 seconds to get that shot done. David.
Troy,
Hit me, sir.
your visit statistics for mobile, is that unique visits or is it, are you measuring page views or visits there?
Visits. We're measuring visits
Visits.
in that
Okay.
sense, yes.
And then
unique
are you doing anything to compare the number of pages seen and time on site between mobile and desktop usage in the MARC study?
Yeah, we are. I mean, we're seeing some similar patterns. I mean, depending on the page. So the question is, how does the time on site compare when you're on the laptop versus on the mobile phone? And as you would imagine, the mobile phone, depending on the page, tends to be a little bit shorter. But you know what? At that point, it really depends on how the page is structured. And if it's a mobile optimized site, they spend a little bit more time. If it's not a mobile optimized site and they're waiting for the whole thing to load up, there's some lag time there as well. But in general, shorter time spent when they're going through the mobile device, not a shock there.
So the other question I had was, are you measuring bounce rate?
We are. I don't like to use that number because there's a lot of question around bounce rate. Like I said, we're using bounce rate in that one chart, but I'm not reporting on bounce rate necessarily. Just the idea that, hey, yes, we've added more people, but we're also sending away a lot more people as well.